So everybody, thanks so much for listening to us on the podcast. If you're listening to us on another platform, regardless where you're listening to us, please subscribe, share this interview. We interview amazing people that do amazing things. We have Andrew Bernstein on. He is going to give his input on many things. We have so many things, Andrew, to talk about. It's andrewbernstein.net. He does have a couple of podcasts on Rumble. Definitely check him out there. Andrew, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so can you tell the viewers a little bit more about you that I didn't bring to the table just now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have a PhD in philosophy. In fact, I have to go teach an intro to philosophy class in this afternoon. But I always wanted to be a writer from the time I was a little kid, and that's my career as a writer. Is it okay for me to show a couple of my books here?
Please.
The most recent one just came out a few months ago is the Brooklyn Stories, arousing collections from New York's most colorful borough. You can tell, I'm a kid from Brooklyn, but this is a collection of stories. This is fiction, and some of these stories, Rob, if I say so myself, are pretty good. Book before that, Heroes, Legends, Champions: Why Heroism Matters. This is nonfiction. There's a philosophical analysis of what makes someone a hero. Why heroes are necessary in human life. But one of my early books, The Capitalist Manifesto, the historic, economic, and philosophical case for laissez-faire. I think those three. I've written many more books and essays, but those three start. And by the way, I have a book coming out this summer on education and the collapse of the American education system. Why Johnny still can't read or write or understand math, and what we could do about it. And it's written for the parents. And hopefully a lot of the parents will read the book. They're the ones that have the power to change American education, to improve it, if they take the hold of the power. And the book, Why Johnny Still Can't Read, does two things. One, it shows who dumped the American education system in the toilet and how they did it and why they did it. And then the second part of the book is how we can improve the situation. So I'm looking forward to that book coming out in a few months.
We're definitely going to have you on for that because it's an important topic. We see the Chinese, they go to school very long hours. That's to be debated whether people want that or not. But these are the people that are coming over here, studying in universities, taking all the knowledge back to China, and then they're screwing us left and right. And it's a total joke that we're doing this.
Right. The communist regime is evil. I mean, communism always is. In China, when it was in Russia, North Korea, communism is evil. And the communist regime in China was dangerous. We should point out, though, Rob, that there's a lot of Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, a lot of, Asian kids who, Asian ancestry, but American kids who are studying, really tend to be very good students. And they love the United States. They stay in the United States. They work and produce in the United States. And, those immigrants and their kids have done a lot of good.
Right. I agree 100%. I want to go into this interview. You have written 3 books on capitalism. You showed one at the beginning of the program. Why that subject? Why does capitalism interest you so much?
Well, when I was 16, I was always pro-American, and I always, even as a kid, I embraced the ideas of the American founders, that an individual has the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To put individualism and individual rights simply, your life belongs to you, Rob. My life belongs to me. Our life does not belong to the state, does not belong to the church. My life belongs to me. So I'm a lifelong individualist. And then I read Ayn Rand, who I strongly recommend, The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. She's a great writer, and I'm a very strong supporter of individual rights. And so capitalism is the system, as Ayn Rand defined it. Capitalism at its best, pure capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, is the system of individual rights. And so that's why I'm so interested in supporting capitalism, to defend personal liberties, individual rights, your right to your own life. And I think this is why so many people always want to emigrate to the United States and still do. And so many, in fact, that somebody who shall remain nameless wanted to build a wall across the southern border to keep, to keep them out, because I think people want to come here overwhelmingly for the freedom, which unfortunately we're losing. But historically, we always had, stood for, defended, and many people want to be free. And I'm certainly one of them. So that's why I defend capitalism against any form of socialism or statism or any type of top-down system where the government dictates to us how we should live our lives.
Can we talk though about the crony capitalism? I mean, this has been happening for quite a long time. I'm 32. I think back to when I was starting in college back in 2008, 2009, the big banks, the collapse there, all this money, this top money, no one knows where it went, half of it. We see with the new bill, as far as the stimulus plan, even the Obama stimulus plan, a lot of that money, no one knows where it went. The Biden stimulus bill, the Biden stimulus bill, we don't know where a lot of that money went. The Trump stimulus, no one knows where a lot of this money is going. It's supposed to be going to small businesses as far as the Trump and the Biden one, and even the Obama one too. And it gets lost and no one knows where this money is. So how do we fix these issues where all these, a lot of these big businesses, a lot of them didn't need the money throughout the coronavirus and, the administration of the Trump and Biden, these places got money and they didn't need it. I think of these places where I'm from in Orlando, Disney World. I mean, they're making money hand over fist right now. There's a huge uproar from the people of how they're screwing a lot of people right now with raising the prices and the inflation. But to get back to the question, can you talk about that, about this crony capitalism, that started, personally for me back in 2008, and it's just ran rabid until 2022.
Yeah, we need to understand, and there's 2 points here, Rob. One is what needs to be done, and then the second point is the practicality of doing that. Now, for instance, in education, I think the government school system needs to be abolished, and education needs to be privatized in this country. That's an ideal. That's going to be a long, hard political fight to get that done. And it's the same thing, I think, with the crony capitalism. Notice that we have not been a capitalist system going back to at least, I think, the New Deal. So that's roughly 90 years. We're a mixed economy. We're a mixture of freedom and government controls. We're freedom of individual rights and obligations to the state and so on and so forth. Crony capitalism is the term that we're still largely a capitalist system. There's still a great deal of individual rights in this country, freedom of speech, although that's under attack.
For sure.
But, freedom of religion, the right of honest people to own guns, the right to start your own business, to make a profit, to keep most of what you earn. There's still a lot of capitalist, individualist elements in our system, but there's a lot of socialist elements too. The government school system is one. It's been around for 150 years, 100 or more, and it's a disaster. But there's the government regulation of the labor markets. The Federal Reserve System is government regulation of the money supply, which ultimately is responsible for inflation, and so on and so forth. And what they call crony capitalism it's a misnomer, because all these abuses are come from the socialist element of the mixed economy, not the capitalist element. They come from government controls and regulation. That's government properly should protect individual rights. So if business people commit crimes, then the government should stand up and defend innocent people. It's like we need a separation of state and economy, the same way we have a separation of state and church. And by the way, let me say something about that, because it's a good analog. Because what the government should do, you see all these clergymen who abuse children, who molest children. Now, the government should have no say in, and doesn't have any say in, what churches preach and what religious texts they use and so on and so forth. But child molestation is a legitimate crime, and those whether they're priests or rabbis or ministers or whatever, they should be indicted, charged with the crimes, tried, and if found guilty, they should be incarcerated. That's the proper role of government. And it's the same thing in the economy. If businessmen are fraudulent, or they use their money they pay off thugs to intimidate their rivals, their competitors, or whatever, those are legitimate crimes, and the government should prosecute them. But if, as Ayn Rand put it, as long as you don't initiate force or fraud against innocent victims, the government should just stay out of your life. And the government should not have the power to regulate business. Again, prosecute criminals. If business people are criminals, they commit serious, legitimate crimes, initiate force or fraud. That's the proper role of the government. The government should not have the power to buy and sell economic favors, should not have the power to dispense economic favors. That leads to the endless corruption that you're talking about. That doesn't happen under laissez-faire. It happens under a mixed economy. So what it really is, Rob, we call it crony capitalism, but what it really is half-ass socialism. It's not full socialism. Full socialism is communism or national socialism or Nazism. It's half-ass socialism. It's where the government has the power to buy and sell economic favors. And I could give a whole bunch of examples, of abuses of that, some of which I chronicled in the Capitalist Manifesto. So we need one of the heroes in Ayn Rand's novel Atlas Shrugged edits the Constitution. What's the clause that he adds? Congress shall make no laws abridging the freedom of production and trade. And I think that's what we need in this country and in any country.
But don't you even see, like we see in the big banks issue, going back to the crash in 2008, 2009, there was regulators that, that go and work for the banks and they go back and forth. And this is the problem. And
right.
Right. So they're going back and forth. They're working for the bank, then they go and work with the government. It's usually they work for the government, then they go work for the bank. But all these guys know each other, and they let it go under the rug. Just like these politicians, they're politicians for however long they want. Then they go work as lobbyists. Then they might come back and run again. It's a joke. So our whole system, as far as that goes, is a joke.
A mixed economy is inherently corrupt. Government regulators are always in bed with big business, always. Some of the people who support, the regulation of business, going back to the progressive era more than 100 years ago, was big business, and you can see how this works. The ostensible purpose of government regulation in the economy is to serve the public interest. Is to serve the public good, right? That's the stated goal. The Ford Motor Company or General Motors or Wells Fargo Bank or Pfizer, so whatever big business you want to mention, they could say and do say to the government regulators and to the legislators in Congress who appoint the government regulators, they say, our business serves the public in any number of ways. One, we have millions of customers who depend on us. Any of your policies that hurt our business hurt the public. Two, we have tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of employees. Any of your policies that hurt our business hurt the American working man. Three, we donate huge amounts of money to worthy charitable causes. Any of your policies that hurt our business hurt our ability to do charity. And four, by the way, Mr. United States Senator, are you running for re-election next year? Oh, you are? Well, maybe you would want a public-spirited, public servant like you might want, a campaign donation from, and if any of your policies that hurt our business restrict our abilities to donate to a fine, upstanding public servant such as yourself. Big business can do this, and they do it. And the reason that they often want the regulation is it protects them from startup ventures. It protects them from entrepreneurs who are just starting out, who don't have millions of customers. They don't have thousands of employees. They don't do charitable donations. They don't contribute to political campaigns. They don't have the money to do that. This keeps regulation always benefits big business at the expense of entrepreneurial startup firms. That's the purpose of why big business often supports it. And you can see how government regulators and U.S. senators and whatever are often in the pocket. When they have the power to buy and sell economic favors, they do so. You remember, a couple of examples come to mind. Remember the film Tucker from the 1980s? Yeah. You remember that? Right. Jeff Bridges as Preston Tucker. That's based on a true story. That Tucker, after the World War II, had all these automobile innovations. He threatened, he's a startup entrepreneur, brilliant entrepreneur, real American capitalist. You're starting out with nothing, all these good ideas, but threatens the profit margins or the sales of the big three in Detroit. And they use their influence with, I think they got I could be misremembering in real life. I think they got, one of the U.S. senators from Michigan to go to his cronies at the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and bring charges against Tucker, which were completely false, and they knew they were false, and they were proven false in court. But Tucker's legal defense bankrupted it, which was the goal. There's the mixed economy, in a microcosm.
So we hear a lot about term limits. Obviously, that's never going to happen. These guys will never vote for term limits in Congress unless they're high on some marijuana, maybe, while they're voting. But regardless of that, we need to get money out of politics. Do you believe if we get money out of politics, that will cut out a lot of these issues that we're talking about and fighting about right now?
No, I think, I'm not sure about term limits, to be perfectly honest with you, but there may be some benefits to term limits. I believe, I'm not an expert in American history. I believe the American founders, I think their original conception was, people would have real jobs, and then they would, and then they would go into politics for a certain number of years to serve in the House or the Senate or as president, and then go back to their real careers of being productive. I don't want to mock the government here, because the government properly conceived is government's not protective. We know that, and it's not productive. We know that. What was Milton Friedman's famous joke about that? That if we put the U.S. government in charge of the Sahara Desert in 5 years, there'd be a shortage of sand. The government's not a productive agency. We can see that in the school system. In communism, the government controls the agriculture industry, agricultural production tanks. You get the idea. But government at its best can be protected. It can protect individual rights, which I think is why we need it, and its legitimate purpose. But I think, to answer your question, I think Ayn Rand is right. I agree with her. We need a constitutional amendment, separating state and economy the same way we've separated state and church, and that will lead to more entrepreneurial startups. Like Steve Jobs and Stephen Wozniak starting out in their parents' garage, starting Apple. There's a great American, capitalist success story. And to go deeper than that is not just the Constitution. We need a philosophy, and the country used to have a philosophy of individual rights. The Enlightenment 18th century philosophy of individual rights the country was founded on. But since then, in the last several hundred years, Marxism has become a dominant philosophy in the American universities, certainly in the humanities divisions, in the schools of education, in the public schools. I mean, they read Howard Zinn's book. If they teach American history at all, they use Howard Zinn's book, was the People's History of the United States, which is just pure Marxist propaganda. It's an execrable work. It's garbage. We need to change the philosophy, and this is where, again, I think Ayn Rand is so important. Her philosophy of objectivism, I think, is a rational philosophy that supports reason rather than faith-based beliefs. Will go by your feelings, and supports individual rights rather than any form of socialism or statism. And we need to change the philosophy in this country, and we need to start in the educational system. But we do need a constitutional amendment legally restricting the government from any activity in the marketplace. Again, the government's proper purpose in the marketplace would be to protect individual rights, to protect honest people from businessmen who are, who actually are criminals. Remember, Bernie Madoff was a good example.
Yeah.
Madoff was, I think, was a legitimate, at one time, a legitimate, Wall Street investor who made money for his clients. Well, then he got the idea, well, if I embezzle for my clients, I can get even more. And he was a crook. And he was a criminal, and he got what he deserved, and there's the government doing its proper function.
What is the state of our union right now? Because President Biden just did a speech on the State of the Union. We won't go into that, but as we end the interview, what is the state of our union in your opinion?
I think we're in. I hate to sound so pessimistic, but I think we're in the scariest position of my lifetime. We have. The Democratic Party has been taken over by the leftists, by the socialist wing, by the Bernie Sanders mentality, and the Marxists who control the humanities divisions of our universities. They're pushing. They're opposed to freedom of speech. To me, they're the most egregious racists The Trump supporters, they're much more racist, I think, than Trump supporters tend to be. Not just the anti-white rhetoric, which is vicious and evil, but their policies. What's the gravest threat to Black Americans? Black criminals. The 90%, year after year after year, the Department of Justice crime statistics show thousands of Blacks, generally young men or teenagers, are murdered 90% year after year after year by Black thugs, gangbangers, little gun busters, as they're known in the projects. How did the Black homicide rate? I saw the statistics. Black Americans are like 13% of the population, and it hovers. It may change a little bit from year to year. 50% of homicide victims and 50% of homicide perpetrators, are Black Americans. Out of 13% of the population, how did the crime rate get so high in the Black urban neighborhoods? It wasn't like that prior to the late 1960s. That's in the last 50 years. And leftist policies, the welfare state, the school system, the minimum wage laws that price, low-skilled young workers out of the job market. Leftist policies are responsible for. You know who talks about? Nobody on the left talks about. Thomas Sowell talks about it. The late Walter Williams talked about it. Larry Elder talks about it. Some of the Black, I want to call them conservatives, but supporters of capitalism talk about it. Nobody on the left talks about it. Their policies are responsible for this astronomical crime rate and homicide rate in the Black American community, and they don't give a rat's ass. They don't care. They don't care. That's the second thing. If leftists cared about Black lives, the first thing they need to do is embrace the principle of individual rights, because like I said, that's the only protection any of us have. But the second thing is, look at the real danger to Black lives. It's not white supremacists, although they're still around and they're evil, but they're a marginalized force amongst 234 million white Americans. It's Black thugs. It's Black criminals who are the main danger. They're going to call me a racist first, but truth is truth. That's the main danger. And Black Lives Matter need to stand up against the main danger to Black lives and say, what caused this crime rate? Oh, it's leftist policies, and investigate, but they don't. So anyway, the domestically, I think the leftists are pushing us towards communism, and Black lives, thousands of Blacks murdered every year is just collateral damage to the left. As long as they can win the battle for communism and end capitalism in America, I don't care how many Blacks are killed every year by Black criminals. So domestically, the inflation rate, which just means the government's expanding the money supply, the government's putting more money into circulation, which inevitably causes rising prices. Domestically, it's not good. But internationally is what's really scary.
Yeah. Because
the tacit alliance between Russia and China, two brutal communist dictatorships. I realize Putin's not doesn't call himself a communist anymore. But he's an unreconstituted communist KGB guy. He's a brutal, communist dictator of the old Soviet style. So the West is distracted by the invasion of Ukraine. China has lusted after Taiwan for decades, going all the way back to Mao. And you think Xi and the Chinese regime and the communist regime isn't watching the West's response to Ukraine? We have long been obligated by treaty to defend Taiwan from communist China. I'm not sure if we still are, and even if we are, whether or not Biden would honor it, I don't know. But a Chinese invasion, a communist invasion, look, the communists have already crushed freedom in Hong Kong, and they're going to do it in Taiwan also. And a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, is that going to draw us into a real shooting war in the Pacific against a very powerful enemy? I don't know. But these are scary times with Russia and China, two brutal dictatorships who want to invade their neighbors and could plunge, God forbid, I say as a devout atheist, God forbid we get drawn into World War III, or that they cause World War III, but it's not impossible. This is the scariest. I was a kid during the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is the scariest time, I think. That's 60 years ago. This is the scariest time in our history, I think, since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it doesn't look good.
We have a lot of inept people in government, so that's great too.
And we have two powerful enemies on two different sides of the world.
Yeah.
And get drawn into a two-front, because what's the end game for Putin? Is he going to stop with Ukraine? Or does he want to swallow up more of Europe and restore the former Soviet empire? Does NATO have to go to war? Are we going to have to, honor our treaty with NATO at the same time possibly fight the communists over Taiwan? These are very scary times. You got two brutal dictators, at either end of the world, who will take advantage of American weakness here to aggressively conquer their freer neighbors.
AndrewBernstein.net. Andrew, where can people get the book, find more about you in general besides the website?
Well, Amazon sells. Amazon's a great company. I disagree with Jeff Bezos on this, that, or the other thing, but it's a great company. You go to my author's page on Amazon. The Andrew Bernstein on author page on Amazon, and they get all my books up there. AndrewBernstein.net. My website is a good place to find information about me. On my Facebook page. And then there's the podcast I do. There's the Hero Show, which is on YouTube. Truth in Culture and Politics, which is on Rumble. We've been deplatformed from YouTube, but so there's any number of places where they could get information on me, Rob.
Well, hopefully I don't join you in being deplatformed. I'm trying not to. So there's a lot of editing I always have to do in my interviews. It's pretty sad, but anyways. Anyways, Andrew Bernstein, love to have you on again for the education book. When is it coming out?
The pub date is June, I believe.
Okay.
It could be out in the summer. The publisher wants to take advantage of the back to school, excitement and everything. So let's call it June. But we'll stay in touch. I'll let you know.
Yeah, let's stay in touch. Andrew, thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Rob. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun and interesting.